Okay, so hello YouTube. We're here today to show you some basic fabric cuts, and I can tell you that I've been teaching upholstery for a long time, well before YouTube, and I can tell you that that is probably the most anxious thing that people have experienced, I think, in the past with my students. It's cutting the fabric. I mean, a lot of times you cut your fabric to the size of the piece and people are aware that they might not have any more fabric and that this is it. If they overcut, they're finished. So we're trying to take a little of the anxiety away. So I'm going to start in this tutorial. I want to show you some of the easier cuts, which are 45-degree angle cuts. I'll show you that in a minute. Not all furniture is like that, though. That's just it. So we're showing you the easy ones. So I had a chair, a nice maple side chair that came in that has 4 easy cuts on it, or the simplest cuts that we do. So I want to get started. Now, this cover is loose. The first thing I want to say is never cut your fabric without it being attached. That's very important. Now, problem with attaching fabric or getting it tight enough so that you can read the cuts is that it pulls, a lot of times it pulls the fabric in a way that's more difficult to read the cut. I'll show you what I mean by that. So, squaring up the fabric like this at a 90-degree angle and then cutting at a 45-degree angle is the ideal thing. But I'm going to show you that you need to secure it first, so that's what I'm going to do first. It doesn't always work out that you can even a fabric up like that. Okay, I think we're going to be able to do it on this chair, but don't think that all chairs this cut. You have to really think about it. Now, if you've seen some of my other tutorials, I think I have one out there called a Martha Washington chair cut. You should look at that. That's one of the most difficult cuts. So, and then there's everything in between. So let's get going in this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin, if you have tacks, you pin tack this with 6-ounce tacks ideally. But I'm not going to staple this all the way. I'm just going to pin this up. Okay, now turn in my stapling gun just a little bit just to hold that. I'm going to go on the back and we're going to pull to the back. We're not going to do anything to the sides yet. Okay, just the front and the back. I'm going to pull the back taut. I'm not over tightening this. Just pin that also. Now, because this is not a very padded seat, I don't think, see when I do this and I pull this and there's a little pinch, I do want to pull that a little bit more to the front. Notice so you're working opposite sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull that just a little bit more and get a couple more staples in there, or tacks. What you want to do is take those old ones out and work a half side at a time. But I'm just going to do this just for the sake, I just really want to focus on the cuts on this tutorial. I have you've seen other videos of me doing the proper way of stretching fabric, but right now I want to show you the cut. So now we're ready to cut. I'm going to do the back cuts first. And so let's see how our fabric squares up, how our fabric is going to square up. Let's just turn our fabric this way. Okay, now that squared up pretty nicely, but I want to point one thing out, okay, because the chair is not a perfect square. You're not going to get a perfect 90-degree angle on that. So what I'm going to show you is the mistake that people make a lot of times. They think it looks great if they even it up and they come to the point like this, but if you notice, this is longer this way than this way, so you have to take that into account. And I can do this with just I can just eyeball this to know that my cut has to come right here and to the post. It's only one cut to the post, okay? One cut to the post. And you're not going all the way to the post, but I'll show you that in a minute. I want to focus in on here. So the mistake people make a lot of times, they assume going to the point and evening it out is the best way, but that's not the best way. In reality, if you squared up the fabric, you put a little fold like that to get these points at the same length. Then you start seeing, oh, okay, that's the better cut. So you take it this way, right? So what I was showing is that I instinctively know that the cut's this way, okay? But a lot of times the mistake is that people go from the point. So you can measure what this is out to here. Let's just get it. Let's just measure that. Excuse me. Just show you. So this is 5 inches, so let's measure out 5 inches this way, right? And draw a line. So in reality, the cut is off this point. Okay, so let's cut that. Okay, now I'm going at a good 45-degree angle, right? This is 90. And then now notice I am not going to go all the way. Okay, the goal here is to stop your cut so that the fabric tucks into the chair, and you want it to tuck into the chair as much as deeply as possible. So now for beginners, I would say stop at that point and try it. See what it looks like. And it bunches up, you know that you have to cut it more, right? So bring it back. That's the safest way to do it. And then cut maybe another 1/2 inch. Then test it out again to see. Still a little bunchy there. I can feel it's not, what I wanted to do is perform well around to make the pleats, and I'll show you that in a minute. I'm going to cut it about another 1/4 inch. And I think that that's going to work. So let's turn it over this way. Well, let's turn it to the back first and show you. See how that nicely tucked in there? And at this point, you might want to get your regulator. You can use your regulator or a needle to kind of tuck it in. Don't assume all the time that you have to keep cutting. This is another mistake. People keep cutting, and then by that time it's too late. You have to introduce a needle or a regulator and to tuck it in. That's the key too, okay? So let's just see how our pleat's gonna work. Now you did such a good job here, see? The goal is, on these cuts, is to have these meet out in space like this evenly, and you have an even amount of fabric on each side of the post. That's your goal. So now you have to cut down. You can't fold that much, so you have to cut it down. So that's your goal in almost every cut, is to have room enough to work your pleats or whatever else you want to do with the fabric, depending on what you're doing on each chair. So I just trim this down to about 1 inch away from the pleat, and then I'm going to pleat it. Watch this now. The trick here is actually angle your pleat and then stretch it out. Did you see that? You see how you have this? Angle the pleat, stretch it to the post, and then pin tack it. Let's get that pin tack in there. And let's look at this side. Okay, again, this side needs to be trimmed down. This is good. I'm going to fold that under as a pleat. A pleat is a folded piece of fabric, basically. So I see a little, I'm glad this happened, a little pucker in here. That means it needs to be cut just a little bit more. And I'm talking just a little bit more. It's probably about 1/16 inch. So I have to come back here now, carefully work my, continue my angle down. And when you cut that, you actually feel it release the tension of the fabric, and you know you did a good job. So it's going to trim this a little bit more. Now let's see if that made a difference. Oh yeah, look at that. We're just going to get a pin tack in there. If we could do a good job, we could fold this under. Now this is just a pin tack, so we're going to go back and we're going to do a little refinement on these pleats, including pulling that down a little bit more. But I just, really the idea of this tutorial is to show you the cuts. So let's go to the other side, now that we're pretty good at cutting. And look at that. The other thing too that's important is make sure you don't overcut your fabric. If you overcut your fabric, it makes it harder to read. So that's why I always suggest, in the other tutorials that you've seen too, is always it's 3 inches bigger, 3 inches larger, no more, no less. That just gives you what you need to stretch with, 1.5 inches on each side, and also to be able to work and play with. Because I just noticed what I did on this. Okay, this looks a little different to me, this fold over here. And the reason it looks different, I'll tell you why. This is how subtle this is. My pin tack in the back is extended a little bit too much to the post. Okay, but I have to compensate for that, right? So I'm going to come right to there. So I'm visualizing how is my fabric going to meet out here. That's what I'm visualizing right now. Let's see how good I am. So let's just, or bad I am. What I mean by that is, do they meet out in space over here? Yes, they do. Good. Okay. So that's I'm gonna do the same over here. I'm gonna take this, trim this down, fold this way, pleat it, I mean. Take my regulator and kind of do a little fancy pull in there. Pin staple that. take this, trim this up a little bit. Okay, now we're ready for our front cuts. Okay? So, now this is good because I want to show you this. So, the fabric on the front in no way squares up at a 90-degree angle, okay? You're still working a 45-degree angle, but it's not with the fabric, it's going to kind of mess you up. So I'm going to take the chalk at this point, and I think this is a good tool for you guys at home. You take chalk is the best tool to use, I think, for this. And not a school chalk. This is actually a special powdered chalk that we use. It's not supposed to stain the fabric. So when you look at this cut, try to visualize, again, that you're going to meet out in space over here. So I'll show you what happens a lot of times. People cut like this, right? And if you see this, I don't know if you can see this. That would be a wrong cut. You're not going to have much fabric on this side. So in reality, it's about right here is the cut, believe it or not. Okay, so let's see if I'm right. Let's see. I'm gonna angle it even more, right, like to this, because I actually adjusted myself. See, so here's the difficult part. This had to be secured in order to get a proper read on the cut, but then when you secure it like that, the fold of the fabric is off. So if you guys have been struggling with cuts, it's no wonder. This is one of the hardest parts. Even I hesitated a little bit there. I had to really think. But a way to look at it is, how is it gonna, what do you want your fabric, how do you want your fabric to perform? What do you want your fabric to do after it's cut? Okay, in this case, I wanted to pleat it. I wanted enough fabric on both sides of the post, enough. So it's enough so I have to trim it down. So this is difficult to read. Oh, somebody commented on the YouTube question and answer that they used muslin, they used a scrap piece of fabric to practice their cuts. That's a fantastic way to do it. But just don't lay the fabric or muslin on the chair loosely. Attach it and experiment on tough cuts or close cuts, or where you really have to think about your angles and everything. So that's a good suggestion that somebody called in. So now I'm gonna I cut that front left post. Now I'm gonna notice how I'm sitting down to do this so that I can square up and then just take a straight cut there for my pleat. Tuck under, and then I roll the pleat just a little bit and then stretch it out. Okay, stretch it, and then it ends up straight and your fabric gets tight. Now let's do it again over here, get a better view. We're going to trim this up like so. We're going to fold this like underneath, and then we're going to just pin tack. Now it's all pin tacked. It's not the final say about how this is going to look. And all this is going to be tight too, and we tighten up in here, and then if we have to undo this and work the pleat again, we do it. Okay, so let's do the last one, because this is just about cuts, this tutorial. I want to focus on the cuts again. You see how as far as the angles go, it's really difficult to read. As a right-handed person, it's easier to go to the left side of the chair and cut this way. And your brain actually sees that better. I'm not an expert when it comes to this, but in my own experience, when you're doing the right cut, it's a little harder to read and it's a little harder to cut because you're turning this way. But I think also your brain doesn't see it as well. So I think the tool with the chalk is important to use, and also practice, but not on your goods, on your good fabric. So when I look at this, and the other tool that I want you to use is try to visualize the cut after it's cut. So that stopped me over there from making a mistake. So I'm going to look at this and I'm going to cut right along here. And I'm going to hope that I have met the 2 points out here before I cut it any deeper. I check, right? That's perfect. I'm going to fold it back. And I'm going to cut just a little deeper, because I know I have to cut just a little bit deeper. Let's see if I did this one the first time the right way. But notice how I'm not overcutting. That's the problem, overcutting, right? So I'm going to trim this down this way. I'm going to fold the fabric, but I'm not going to fold the fabric straight at the pleat, I'm going to angle it a little bit. I'm going to angle it a little bit, and then I'm going to pull it out. You see that? Pull it straight. I'll show you a little bit better over here. Watch this. I'm going to trim it. I'm going to fold it or pleat it. I'm going to angle it just a little bit, and then I'm going to stretch it out. I'm going to stretch it so that that's straight. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a couple of more staples in here, not permanent staples. And over here, same thing. Just to pin tack the entire thing, and then I want to show you something. And there you go. So here we go with basic cuts, but what we find, right, is the back is a little bit more basic than the front. The back, definitely we got the angle on it, but when we pulled it in such a way, our front cuts were a little harder to read because the fabric wasn't pulled at that 90-degree angle. But don't think that every piece has that 90-degree angle. I would say it's rare to get a 90-degree angle and then cut 45 and then you're all set. That, in a perfect world, all of our cuts would be like that, but that's not the case. So my other tool, I'll just say it again, try to visualize what you want the fabric to do after it's cut, and that's probably a better way of thinking about it. But let me know how you like this tutorial. I'm really interested in finding other techniques, especially teaching, in the teaching forum that we have. And please don't forget that if you want to see really in-depth and more difficult cuts, go to BroadwayUpholsterySchool.com on the online classes. They really do show a lot more extensive cutting, and you pick up a lot there. And I think there's good value there. But also, I wanted to thank all of our YouTubers too. No problem with we love our station on YouTube. If you want to stick to YouTube, that's fine. You'll pick up a lot of tips. And until next time, we'll see you later.